Life is hard. Philosopher Susan Neiman says that every time we make the judgment, this ought not to have happened, we're stepping onto a path that leads straight to the problem of evil. Evil is one of the toughest things that we face in life. We don't want to talk about it. And yet the world is filled with pain and suffering, with anguish and despair. Many of us hold God responsible for the evil in our lives. Many others have abandoned the idea of God because of the suffering they've experienced. You might be in that place, or very likely you have friends or family members who are in that place. Because we're all usually blindsided by tragedy. Some of us are trapped in our trauma, our anger, trapped in fear. Some never find the exit. But bad things happen, and sometimes horrendous evil happens to good people who are simply trying to lead good lives. And we struggle to understand it. Because life is supposed to be fair. People are not supposed to be brutalized. Parents are not supposed to molest children. Accidents are not supposed to happen to loved ones. We're supposed to be valued, not treated like scraps or objects used for the benefit of others. And it all feels wrong because things are not the way they're supposed to be. We were made for joy. We were made for peace. We were made to flourish and live a life that is abundant. Jesus said so. He said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. I don't give it to you as the world does, so don't let your heart be troubled and don't be afraid." Jesus said he spoke these things that we might have joy, his joy, and that our joy might be full. But yet we experience sorrow, anxiety, grief, and loss. Jesus told us this too. He said, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." He also said in the same breath that the thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy, but I came that you might have life and have it to the full. We want that full life. Somehow we all know that things are missing. We don't want to suffer. No one wants to suffer or think about suffering, so we tend to avoid it. Therefore, when bad things happen, we go around confused and dazed, either covering up or numbing the pain and looking for someone to blame. New Testament scholar N.T. Wright put it this way. First, we ignore evil when it doesn't hit us in the face. Second, we're surprised by evil when it does. Third, we react in immature and dangerous ways as a result. This is what I found true in my life for a very long period of time. I did not want to think about evil. I pretended like it wasn't there, and I definitely responded in immature and dangerous ways. I learned that trying to ignore evil or hide from evil is unproductive. Let me tell you a little bit about my story and how I began the study in evil and the problem of evil. Although hundreds of books have been written about evil over centuries, even millennia, the problem of evil is not just philosophical or theological or ethical. It's personal. It was the personal side of experiencing evil that began my quest to understand what is evil, where does it come from, where's God in all this, and what can I do about it? In my life, I had experienced quite a lot of pain. Now, certainly people have suffered more than I have. We all experience suffering. But growing up, my predominant memory was hiding in my closet. I was afraid of the things going on around me, and I hid. And that became, for many years, also the metaphor of my life, hiding from the pain, trying to hide, trying to get away, trying to concede in any way I can to not have to face or confront the suffering and the evil and the hardship. But all that led me to was compromising and ending up in more and more difficult situations. I was the first Christian in my family. I became a Christian because at the age of 16, I had decided that the only reason anybody is ever nice to someone is to get something from them, and I did not want to live in a world like that. My sister told me, "I think you're going to die of old age at 25, and I just remember looking at her and thinking, I sure hope so. But yet, I was looking for life. There was something in me that wanted to find something real, and I wanted to find God. So I went to it was a Young Life meeting. And there, I don't remember anything that was said, but I know at some point I had heard the message of Jesus. But when the college student who was helping with that meeting looked me in the eye, I knew I had seen the love of God. And that changed everything. In her eyes, I knew, and I went home and I wept. That whole night, I just wept. And God began speaking to me about the bitterness in my heart, the anger, the resentment that I had toward the whole world. And he washed it away from me. He pulled that bitterness right out of me. And so for a season of time, I experienced God's love and God's goodness. But I knew nothing of the Bible. I didn't know where to go for church. I didn't know who to turn to. So it was quite a journey. I did end up meeting some wonderful Christian people along the way, but then that group also went sour. People came in and took it over and started telling us that we had to obey those who were in leadership over us, and women were supposed to be quiet and not say anything, and my soul so slowly became crushed once again. I ended up, as time went on, marrying within this same kind of circle someone who was studying to be a pastor. He had a third of the New Testament memorized, was leading Bible studies. He was leading evangelistic crusades in the area. We got married because I was told the only way a woman could be in ministry was to be married to someone in ministry. But he was unfaithful and he was violent. After some years, when he broke my nose, I finally called our pastor, who told me, "Go home and love your husband." So I went home and I continued to be silent about the things going on around me until he tried to kill me. God intervened and I lived, but I actually was sad that I was alive because I no longer really wanted to be alive. But the Lord said to me if I stayed, I would die. So I managed to find a way to escape. And that was part of my journey. It was difficult to find a way back to church. The Lord was gracious. I did end up having to go through a divorce. And then I thought, now I have a big D. Now I will never be able to be in ministry. I will be disqualified. So I threw myself into business. Worked hard, became a workaholic because as long as I was working and seeing successes, I didn't have to feel what I actually felt. I could just be numb and work hard and have more successes. But God was at work in my life. And many more difficult things happened. And I'll spare you some of the details, but it continued to lead me on a journey to understanding why so much pain was going on in my life. It felt like I was being run over, backed up. And finally, after being disabled from working so hard, I sat in a big chair and stared out the window, and I felt God speaking to me again, telling me to just listen. And during that time, God began to reach my heart once again and actually told me to go to seminary. He said, you need to find answers for yourself, but you need to find it out of Scripture in the Greek and the Hebrew. So in my 40s, I took my first theology class. I tried to find the best place to go to study Greek and Hebrew. And I began my quest. But my quest was still, who is God? Is God good? And during the years studying for a Master of Divinity degree, and I was by no means any Master of Divinity because I still was having so many problems and challenges and losses in my life. My second husband, after 9 years of illness, ended up taking his life. Our son, who was 11 at the time, said, "Mom, I think God is mad at us and has abandoned us." And he went as far away from God as he could for about 5 years. And during that time, I was in seminary working on studying and finding out who is God. And I was praying and asking God to show me his love. But I didn't know that God loved me. And I felt the Lord prompting me to continue on, to go on for a PhD here while I was still just so beaten down. But I wanted to know God and I wanted answers. So when I began my study of the problem of evil, I did not start it with any answers. I was searching. But it was during the years that I was digging more into Scripture that God began to reveal himself to me. And it's these things that the Lord showed me through my life and through my biblical studies and through my reading, as much as I could get my hands on, we have to face evil to overcome it. Facing evil and doing something about it take courage. Nelson Mandela said, "I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear." This is what we must do to overcome it. It's tough to face our deepest fears, our greatest shame or inner rage that result from the wrongs that we've experienced or that we've done. But this is something we must do, and this is something that I invite you to continue to do in this journey as you go through this course.